Okay, this is Jim the Keys bartender coming to you from Key Largo, from a hopefully technologically adept Key Largo, because today's show is all about technology. Once again, I don't mean to be a bitcher about someone about not being adept at being able to handle technology. I just spent 5 days trying to reload software onto various devices in order to allow me to record. And I realized that I've been kind of reticent to delve in deeply to technology and being in paradise, like it as it were. And it's kind of a little, I would have to say kind of a dreary day here in the paradise. But then I said before, unless you had dreary days, you'd never be able to recognize the beautiful days if every day was the same and beautiful. We've seen those shows, The Good Place, whenever they show heaven. Heaven is, if there's a cloud in the sky, it's a couple puffy clouds and they look like animals and shit like that. So having for, I guess, a couple of years, I've been doing the show for 4 years. And originally when I first started doing the podcast, I started with a friend, Connor, from his porch, just about less than a mile from where I am right now. And we used the technology, and I used a Chromebook, I think, in the beginning with a powered mic, a USB connecting mic, if I'm not correct, yes, from this, and it picked up everything, and that's why I understand where people use soundproof rooms, right? When they put the eggshell crates with the foam and all that stuff, and they set it up. I didn't want to really get into that. I realize what it is and what it isn't. I'm more about ideas than this, or maybe I'm kidding myself, right? Maybe it isn't always about ideas, but I've been podcasting it'll be 4 years in April. And so we started the show, we started messing around with the sound, and you'd hear the sound quality in the beginning was, I know you may say, hey Jim, your sound quality right now is shit. And you always hear people talking about editing. Who do you use to edit? I said, I haven't edited shit. I'm not afraid to edit. I just don't know how to edit. Every time I look at these programs to cut and paste, I don't know if I'm saving, which one I'm saving and which one I'm cutting with it. And it kind of shows you and says, it doesn't highlight it. It says, this is the one you want to get rid of, and this is what you want to keep. Or this is what you want to edit. But nope, it just makes the assumption that everyone is in the same place at the same time. The awareness of technology. So we started out doing it in person with a powered mic, and we go to different places. And I realized when you go to a crowded place with a powered mic, it picks up everything. And so you don't isolate any sounds. It's great to give kind of an atmosphere thing about it, but a lot of people just don't want to listen with a lot of background noise going on. At least that's what I thought. Who knows, someday maybe the powered mic will get back into it, so you want to hear everything going on at depth. Because with powered mic doesn't isolate. I think it's good sometimes to have for some reason, maybe I need to do a hookup where I can do my soundboard and have dynamic mics, which for the unversed, a dynamic mic just picks up the sound that's spoken into it. It's not powered, you're using the sound to activate the mic. Where a powered mic, it is open all the time. It's like having a small window open versus having a door open. Powered mic is a big door, a garage door, and it lets everything in. And there's no discernment. And I imagine that you could just isolate the voices. I always see that in science fiction movies where something's going on. There's a lot of noise and stuff like that. And it says isolate the human voices or isolate the voices. And then you get the sound. But that's the thing. I always try to isolate that. So we started with the powered mic. We tried to go to restaurants, do that with a powered mic and have all that background noise. And then I got a little more nuanced with a soundboard. And I had people come in and, remember Connor, we were doing, I think I was using my laptop at the time, but eventually we figured out I got a soundboard and the soundboard went right into the jack on the laptop and we used the dynamic mics. I had that, but I still had a problem with quality because unless you have to enable permissions for certain things to get through to the program, meaning you have to give permissions for a microphone, and then you have to disable the microphone on the laptop. It's not an elegant situation, especially when you have different software programs that aren't. Let's say if I'm using a Windows laptop and I'm using supposedly software that's compatible with Windows, but it's not necessarily compatible with a Lenovo laptop or an HP. So I've had these things. I can't get the mic turned off. I can't get it turned on. So I'd always have this dread before doing a show whether the sound was even going to come through. Imagine that every time you go. It's like going out to your car every day and there's always something new with it. You could have maybe today the battery's dead. Now the starter's dead. Maybe the ignition's off. And it's just like every event, every recording, and I was doing one show a week, just dragging it out. No theme music, and every show in the beginning we got someone allow us some of their music, but it sounded kind of Huckleberry to me, and I don't have a problem with Huckleberry, but it didn't fit my style or the style I wanted it to be. Now, it could be a Huckleberry, but that was not the correct Huckleberry music for me. You could play something stupid. Like I said on a previous show, the sad thing about that YouTube video about the drunk guy was that he was drunk. But the greatest thing on that was the music. They were doing My Heart Will Go On, and you hear that in the background, the Celine Dion version. But overlaid on top of it was some person with a recorder playing along. And I don't know if that was for effect, and if someone had recorded it in total seriousness, that they were playing the recorder on the top of it. And it was a recorder. It sounded exactly like a recorder. If it was or it was someone that's really bad at the clarinet. But the recorder has a certain nuance to it. And when this guy's falling around and flailing with the recorder playing in the background, the recorder, that's that simulated, I guess that's a clarinet, some kind of piped instrument. And it was hilarious. And I always thought that maybe a kazoo or something like, but that sounds a little zany. And I'm not necessarily zany. Right? I mean, I'm goofy, I'm cheesy, I'm that. So, having some guy play some kind of bluesy, keysy trop music in the background wasn't fitting. And then, so Bill Wissinger, my co-host for the longest time, and he was very helpful. He helped me get it. He helped me with all this software to get it onto my laptop and getting it all together. Bill eventually came along and said, I can create music and you don't have to worry about that. And he created a song. It had some bass line to it. It's kind of innocuous and stuff like that, but it's a theme to the show. And it identifies with it. So when you hear it, eventually people do change a show. I think the music to the shows. I'm not saying my show is a hit show, but being able to adapt and change. So it eventually came. The one has a little kind of rock element to it, and blues to it. Rock and blues. That's what I told him. It's something like the Chainsmokers or the Keys, the Black Keys, I think they were called. Name of it. But so we went in, did that, and then we started. I used the inline microphones, meaning the dynamic microphones, with the soundboard. Now, the soundboard, if you've seen a concert, you see you have like 50 different dials. The soundboard can handle up to, Jesus, I should know this from now. I've been using the soundboard for over 3 years. But the soundboard can handle up to 4 mics at a time. 4, and that's pretty much what I think is the limit, at least for you should do for podcasts usually. But that's just my opinion. There's people that can do 20. Who knows? There's no reason why you couldn't have as many as you want. If you had a Zoom call, I could do. I'll get to that later. But so we were struggling with sound. We had the sound. Sometimes it was good. Sometimes it was bad. Sometimes we have a hum. That's a loose connection. So you got to be careful with that. And then the longer I did it, the more, I won't say adept, but moderately assured that the sound was going to come out adequately, if not good. So I had that there. Then I can concentrate on content and think about what needs to be said during it. So we started doing that, and then we with the microphone, I was able to go out to places, set it up, and do it. Now, the other problem after technology, people don't quite understand, that some of the people that were on the show didn't realize that they were talking to you, the listener. Even though I'm a surrogate for you, if someone else is on the show, and if I ask them something I want to know, I ask them as a representative of the show for you. So sometimes people would just talk to each other, engage in conversations without any context. They would start referring to people on the other side, and just like inside stories. And I say, well, listen, that's great. As a person, you should have inside stories when you're talking to someone. When you walk up to someone in the street, say, hey, how you doing? I just saw Mary. Mary said this, and Mary blah 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 blah, back and forth, Mary. And you don't. If you do that on a podcast, then who the fuck is Mary? You know what I mean? And what context does Mary belong in this conversation? So, and sometimes it was funny. One time they were talking about Sissy, and it had Bill and Luke, and it's funny. Bill and Luke, with their style of talking, lent the show with the music that was on there, lent the show to tilt to the more of the country hill kind of thing. I'm not going to say hillbilly, but more rustic kind of idea behind it, because you have these two guys and then you have me from Philadelphia, even though I did predominantly sometimes, I know if I was jealous that they were grabbing a mic or I was grabbing a mic, but then in the end I said, listen, we have an overarching theme and I just want to be able to do this. So if we're going to tell a story, tell it to the end, give the backstory. If you're going to talk about Sissy, tell them who Sissy is. If you can't say who Sissy is, make it an interesting story, say why you can't say who it is, and give a little context. Just make a context it as if you have a very dear friend with you and you don't want to leave them out of the loop. That you're being a good host. When I say good host, just like you would be a host at a party. And if someone doesn't know anybody at the party and you introduce them to people, and then you bring the person over to make introductions to another person, right? The conversation you have with the other person, the person you're introducing the unknown guest to, You're going to give context to it. You say, this is so-and-so, and this is so-and-so here, back and forth. And this is the basis for a conversation. So podcasting is like a society, really, when you think about it. You just want to make sure that whenever you say something, I know sometimes I would start a conversation, I would start a line of thought, and then I would go off in another direction. Well, that's not because I'm trying to keep you out of the loop. That's just because how fucked up some of the conversations I have because of the way I think. I have I hesitate to call it ADD or ADHD and things like that. I think most humans are meant to be able to handle multiple things at the same time. Now, being able to focus laser-like and stay on topic is the most unhuman of qualities. Being able to, unless there's some danger involved. So just think, if you believe in evolution, you should, if you're listening to the show, because you probably wouldn't like the curse words and all that stuff. And there's a lot of people that say that. And a lot of people say, when you're doing a podcast, you shouldn't be just coming up with shit on your own. It's not like you should have an agenda. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. But who does that at a fucking bar? You walk in with a piece of paper. Well, no, we're going to be talking about this thing. First, we're going to be talking about toilet paper. Does the roll of paper go on one side, facing out, or does it go behind? The big controversy for the ages. No, it isn't. And no one, if you walked in a bar like that and started saying, well, we're talking about toilet paper now. Next, we're going to be talking about girls and how, whether they should have tampon dispensers in all the bathrooms and stuff like that. And, and why don't they have this for guys? That's not the way normal conversations happen with agendas. And I'm not saying a podcast can't be that way. And it should be if you're doing a show that's formatted. But if you're looking for a more free flow, case in point, the Keys Bartender podcast, it's more like a bar. And a bar is never on topic. It shouldn't be on topic. Some of the people, except for the bartender, could be slightly of diminished capacity or enhanced capacity if you want to take. Some people are loosened up by having a couple drinks, and some people start losing it after they have a couple drinks. Just a reminder again, it's going on to 13 months I haven't had a drink, and that's my own decision. Like I said before, when we started, added to the recordings in the beginning was, I don't think I was drinking in the beginning when I was doing a. Yes, I was. I was drinking when I started the podcast. Yes, I was drinking. I would bring over. We have a bottle of bourbon. I bring a bottle of bourbon over for my co-host, and since it was we have a couple drinks to do it. Now that helped the ease of conversation maybe, and some of the nervousness I felt over recording. Now it wasn't my first rodeo when it came to doing recordings and things like that. I've done a couple commercials, just small time radio commercials. I've been a maitre d' a host for a catering hall, so I was used to, and from the time in high school and through college and the military, I'm used to addressing people and people in authority and people, informing them and things like that. But it's kind of really interesting, which that part of the podcasting became. I guess I thought it was more critical, but then again, I can't be that practiced. Let me take a little break right now. This is going to be where I add the commercial right at this time. We'll be right back. Okay. Well, we're back. Let me turn this off here. Where was it? I am going to remember an idea. I was talking about my speech patterns. Okay. Well, so we're all dealing with that in the beginning. We got the soundboard with the dynamic mics. I'm out the door going to bars, having the soundboard set up and all that. And in September, the beginning of September or late August, September, in 2017, we have Irma comes in. And that's when I did my first remotes with, I was using this Chromebook, which I'm recording on right now. And I was just doing reports, and part of it was concern for what was happening to my home and to my town and to the region. I evacuated my family up to Lakeland, Florida. We had stayed in a nice hotel. My sister-in-law was with us, our dog. So we're hunkered down there, and I'm doing short podcasts from there, waiting for Irma. And I'm calling back to the people that decided to stay. And it's people that, just that don't have young children or any children, and they're staying behind, and they're staying into more secure, raised places. We can argue the soundness of that, but these people felt they would be all right to be there. And as we've seen that what happened with Irma, it went a little further south, but they still had significant damage up where my neck of the woods in Key Largo. When I say south of in the Keys, down in Big Pine Key was where it got hit really bad. South Marathon and Big Pine Key. And we did remotes. We talked to people while it was going on. I think while it was hitting the Keys, I was on the phone with Chris Euland, Video Dave. Dave, he was there. Bill, and after the hurricane, so we had all those things. We had blow by blow what happened, and we had some video streaming on some, seeing some refrigerators and cars floating down the street, and then we had some aftermath of what went on, talking about what the neighborhood looked like. And Bill helped us out with that. Bill Wissinger, a sometime host there, co-host. So I came back from we were in Lakeland. We did just some, small shows, short shows, and kept that through. When it came back, we went back to going into the bars. And I was in my local one, The Catch, which I realized I always would love to do at The Catch, but the thing with The Catch is that it was indoors. And it's a family restaurant, even though it's a bar. There's people that live in the neighborhood, and they pick up their kids and they come in, 4 o'clock, and they're having, some food, a couple drinks. And I didn't feel comfortable doing a show where we can have explicit language and talk about things, and it kind of restricts you. You see like a 9-year-old sitting over there looking at you. Now, people say, well, will you bring your kid to a bar? Do you bring your kids to a Fridays or Chili's? Well, it's the same kind of, when I say, I'm not going to say genre, it's the same kind of atmosphere with the family restaurant that happens to have a bar. Now, as it gets later at night, after 7, 8 o'clock, the bar becomes more adult. So that's more of a thing would made sense. And we went to another place, and we did it from the Blackwater Siren, which was still a family restaurant, but it was open outside and under a tiki bar, and that was Bill and Luke. So we're able to do more adult themes, talk about it was International Women's Day, and at the end of it, we're being pretty good. I'd have to say most of it wasn't misogynistic, because my intention was to dedicate, there were 3 guys on it, and say, listen, it's International Women's Day. And it was a big deal in Poland. That's the reason I talked about it, because every year I got to remember that. It's coming up soon. Oh, okay. Got to put that in the book. But we did a show, and we're talking about our significant others, how important it is to recognize, the contributions and the work of women and things like that, and their role in our society, right? I mean, God, we wouldn't have any society without them, right? No new people without it. no babies, nothing. So at the end of it, we did a great show, and then already sign off, and Luke just starts singing a song. I don't know if he wrote it or someone else, but it was such a wonderful song. He just finished talking about how his sister, who has a doctorate, how much he respects her, and then he starts singing a song called "I Love Pussy" at the end of the show when I was signing off, and I just said, "Oh my God." Just viscerally that hit me. And I said, you can't do that. But the podcast person goes, oh, that's great. I had no idea. That is great podcasting at the end of it. So if you ever go back to, the best part of the show, and was sometimes the best part of those episodes was trying to keep Luke and Bill on topic and not get them talking about their gigs and stuff like that. Okay, I'm going to pause right now. I have someone coming in. Talk to you later. One moment. Okay, sorry about the delay right there. Oh, let me turn this off. Okay, so here we are. We're using the dynamic mics, which is pretty much what we do all the time when we do remotes. I do it from the Catch. I do it from the Blackwater Siren. I was doing it we also did some shows from Shipwrecks. I did some separate shows from the Florida Keys Brewery. And that was 2018, I think, 2019. And we did it and then we eventually went down to Key West and did shows from their remote shows, and realizing the drawbacks of having what I should have done is recorded the sound of the entertainment when I went to Irish Kevin's. When I did the shows from the Key West Smugglers Distillery with my friend Jim Martin, we just used inline mics, the soundboard, and we did use soundboard when I was Irish Kevin. I spoke to Kevin and that. It was a loud environment, but like I said, the dynamic mic works great there when they can hear what you're saying and you just hear what they have to. I mean, as long as the people can hear what they're saying to each other, meaning we have to speak in a microphone in a loud environment, but you got to make sure that the other person with you with a microphone can hear you with their own ears, where you're listening to us through the magic of technology using the soundboard, that's conversation is flowing back and forth. Now that's where people, like a radio show, you see people with headsets and things like that, with the old style ones where people were in when they were broadcasting a basketball game, right? So I had all these. I still had the remotes. I did it from certain events. We had the magical event. What was that one morning? I was still drinking, and I set up at 5 a.m. from the Key Largo half marathon, Key Largo Bridge Run, and Luke Summers, who was on the show before, he was performing first. I guess it was going to be at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting there setting up stuff, and Luke Summers comes over and puts a bottle of Old Granddad in front of me, or Wild Turkey. Now remember, it's 5:30 in the morning. That's the way it was back then. And I was still drinking at that time. And as I said, there was a couple episodes, besides the technology problem, there's a couple times when especially doing a show from the Catch or someplace when people were giving me drinks and buying me, giving me a bourbon or a bottle of beer, there were times where I'd say that just doesn't necessarily help, and especially with someone who has problems with self-control. So we did that, and then I was pondering the ideas. I said, man, I was spending more than half my time, let's say 2/3 of my time, traveling and getting set up at these remote locations. And I was thinking, does this really add to the show? And eventually we started transitioning to do it at fixed locations. When I say fixed location, fixed, not open. I still wanted to do it from a bar, but I didn't want to necessarily do it from a public bar. So we went over to our friend's Jenna Kelly, her place, and she had a beautiful tiki bar, and we do it there, and they have the same set people, and we go through contacts, and the quality of the show, I think, was enhanced because people, I wouldn't say necessarily had the same vision, but I was able to get across the vision of what the intention of the show was. It was an entertain and make it about the Keys and make it about bars and make it about the things we do there. And being in a tiki bar, under the tiki bar at Janet Kelly's place, that was great. But then recently, I think we had a great formula. And every so often, I would incorporate a new technology that we can incorporate, which was a lot of radio shows and everything, and people know that you want to be able to talk to someone who's not there. And I don't mean in a hallucinatory way. I just mean to say talk to them on the phone and be able to incorporate the sound into it. And there was a way using the software I use a secondary software to broadcast, and it's Spreaker, and Spreaker farms out the finished product to iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, whatever you're listening to. So, but I was able to incorporate Skype by using, there's technologically tethering software, tethering that takes the sound from Skype. Because you got to remember, it really never exists. I can talk to someone on Skype, but that doesn't mean that sound incorporates itself, embeds itself, or is recorded on the recording app. Because you have your headphone, and a headphone may not necessarily, you want everything I hear, I want to hear it the way you hear it. And everybody, so if I'm talking to someone, I want that sound to be incorporated into the broadcast. It sounds simple. Well, Jim, if they're talking to you, you can hear them. Of course, it's recorded. That's not necessarily true. There were times when I did phone calls and stuff like that, and you never, even with Skype, even with the system, the tethering system, unless you have enabled certain permissions for the microphones, and I know you tech people who listen to it, the podcast, and people that listen to podcasts are more tech savvy and stuff like that. Actually, I'm probably slightly higher than the average podcast listener when it comes to the technology that's involved, but I'm nowhere near as savvy or adept at figuring this out than these people that have been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, it is interesting. And if I found out the hard way, and the hard way was having a conversation and recording it and not having any sound come through, and having to tell someone who you endeavored to have as a guest that, I'm sorry, I've been trying for an hour, I can't do it. And they'll look at you and say, oh my God. If anything shows a lack of amateurish, or the lack of professionalism, it's not being knowledgeable about your equipment. And equipment is also the software. So we dealt with that a long time. So by the time COVID-19 came about, meaning I'm talking about how it affected us here in the United States when things started shutting down in March, I had a working knowledge on how to incorporate remote conversations into the podcast. And that, thank God for that, because it would have been all me, and like you're hearing today. But that was key in development. Now we're transitioning back, and you need all these things. I think it's very important to be able to have a remote conversation with someone. I've seen there's podcasts where I know that people are recording in two different places and are listening. The sound quality is excellent. It's excellent. I still haven't figured it out. I don't know if they're logged on to a similar site. I mean, I just wanted to be able to do that one time instead of using Skype. And you say, if you can log in, let's say if someone else was logged into my online recording app at the same time, and I would hear them like I hear the theme music, and they'd have the same quality, their mic and whatever equipment they were using, they were that would be great for a co-host. So I can have a co-host in Hanoi, in Taipei. I know I'm picking Asian places, or Canberra, Australia. I mean, first I probably have to figure out the accents. I'm more so for the person from Canberra, Australia, than probably for the people in China. I really understand Asian English because they're impeccable. If I could change my accent to it would be someone born in Hong Kong, maybe, and they have a slight, I have a standard halfway between a British and a U.S. accent. That would probably be, and that's a side note. So here we are now. We're rolling into the New Year's, January. The COVID vaccines are being broken out. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm thinking about once I've gotten the vaccine. Now, this is the theory before. Once I've gotten the vaccine, I'll feel more comfortable going out. Not because I'm afraid of contracting, because I think as a bartender, I've been bartending for at least 6-7 months since we reopened back right before Memorial Day, that I've probably been exposed to it once or twice, or maybe more. I haven't ever tested positive, but that could be because I may have been asymptomatic. But once I have the vaccine, I'll still practice my, the preventative measures by social distancing and using a mask. But then I wouldn't be exposing other people to it. And that's my biggest concern. That's always my concern. It's for my family and me. I have to go work, and I do those things with the mask, wash my hands, blah, 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 good hand hygiene, and all that stuff. But going out to do the show, which is not necessarily for supporting my family, I have to even be more stringent and have a higher standard. So that's where the vaccine comes about. Once I have that, reduces the possibility of becoming a carrier. Then I'll feel more comfortable about it. And I would probably have to consider who's on the microphone, how they're going to talk, whether I don't want to have someone on the microphone who's a possibility of infecting someone else that's maybe broadcasting. That's my responsibility. And it's not just about the show. And it's got to be a lot harder for other shows that are used to that. There's other shows where they have more people from the outside, if they're concerned. If they're not concerned, obviously it's not a thing for them. If they're not concerned about it. That's the whole thing. But I'm ready. I'm right on the cusp of doing that. I'm thinking because of what I've may be able to get done here, that I might have the vaccine by mid, and I think the second shot by early February, the first or second week of February. And then I'll have to see how long they say that is before the efficacy allows me to go and do shows out there. And then maybe I'll have to use a sock over the microphone, maybe wrap them, just so when if I have to use it again, I can always wipe it down and do all these things that sanitize those things. So here I am. It's almost 4 years, and I'm still somewhat struggling. And when the new problems come ahead now, it's more when there's a Windows update on my laptop. If there's a Windows update, it changes all the permissions and things like that, and I had struggled with that over the last 2 weeks. So that's why I like to have a backup using a Chromebook, using my phone. There's nothing, there's not, if the, if I was going to do a live show right now, think about setting all that stuff up. In the future, if things get better, and I want to be consistent. I want to guarantee my sponsors that I'm going to be there. I'm going to be able to do it. I'm going to broadcast when they're ready. If they bring a representative, they want to talk about whatever they want to talk about. I want to be effective. So maybe I'll have a more redundant system in the future. Maybe have an Apple's product with a Windows product. So if the Windows product fails, the Apple software will continue. So I can do all those things. I just don't want to invest all that thing until I'm ready. And being ready is half the battle, right? And I've been doing it. You shouldn't let, I always counsel my listeners, you shouldn't let some restrictions or some, what would you call it? I want some hindrances or bumps along the road to stop you from doing what you want to do in life. And every time I do run into something, it's something I learned. If I have to overcome it, if I have to overcome the sound, I realize it's because the jack in my phone or the jack in my laptop or Chromebook or whatever is not recognizing the input. So the sound's not coming in. It's just recording off from the old microphone. Or that there's an internet interruption. And we get a ton of those down here. Ton of it. So a lot of times it restricts the ability to do live when that happens. If there's any interruption in it. And it's been horrible. It's been horrible in the Keys with that. I know. People make jokes about that all the time. We get all these amazing things technology allows us to do. You're able to use a small handheld device. We're allowed to talk to anybody, any place in the world, and broadcast to literally tens, no, hundreds of people using these devices. But the thing about it, more technology, the more things can go wrong. There's more steps in the process. And that's the thing we have to deal with sometimes. So using a redundant system, going from live to recorded to another piece of hardware, we can get the job done. Anytime I get someone that comes in and says, hey, listen, we'd like you to do a live podcast from so-and-so. I said, you know what? I'll do it live, but it's much more effective because, especially with the half marathon, there weren't a ton of people at 6 o'clock in the morning listen to that. But it's the comedy aspect of 6 o'clock in the morning that Luke Summers Glenn is bringing over a bottle of wild turkey over to the tent I'm in, to do the broadcast. That's funny. And that's something people can listen to time and time again. And not necessarily people wanting to listen to so-and-so, a live event, just like the radio show thing. I just wanted to stick away. We are similar to a radio show in some aspects. I mean, we use audio, but we're not similar when it comes to content and our general aim. And without a sponsor right now, which is nice, I don't have to worry about the sensibilities of someone. Right? And I'll tell you, I probably won't get, until AT&T fixes up their act down here, I don't think there's any possibility that would be, I don't think AT&T endorses any podcasts. It would be a liability issue for them if someone's ever said anything racist or hateful. So they don't know how to do that. But eventually, that's my goal right now, to be able to do the things that we have been doing, be able to grow the audience, maintain consistent quality with the sound and content, and be able to do this. So it's going on 4 years, where this is episode 373. I'm hoping that we make it to 400, and then 500, and then we'll be all hunky dory. And I'm looking forward to expanding our listenership here in South Florida and the rest of the country and the rest of the world, and being able to talk. Now, when I started the podcast almost 50 minutes ago, I know because I stopped for a couple minutes and had a little pause, it was cloudy. Now the sun's out. It's going to turn out, we're going to get close to 70 today, which is as cool as it probably gets down here. There's only going to be like 4 or 5 days, hopefully, in the Keys this year, that we'll see a daytime high not make it to the 70s. I know, that's amazing. I was just watching you poor people in Denver. It's 19 degrees at night and 50 degrees in the daytime. So nighttime workers experience a totally different environment than a daytime. 50 degrees, you got a medium-sized jacket, right? 19 degrees, you're wearing a parka. So, and that's within 12 hours. We don't have that as much down here. You don't see that. You don't see the big swings. Our swings are 10 degrees. We rarely see that 30, 40 degrees you see at these dry places. So if you see it only gets up to 75 here in a day, it's unlikely that it goes below 60, 67 at night. So this is great camping weather for people. If you're going to come down here, for our campers and people, outdoorsy people, it's wonderful. Unless you need the heat. And if you are a listener, please share this with your friends. The more listeners you get, the more attraction I get from the sponsors, the more responses I get from you. If you want to contact me at jim@keysbartender.com, I welcome our foreign listeners and our listeners here in the States, in Florida, in Key Largo, in the Florida Keys. Contact me. I will contact you or respond to you at least. So it's jim@keysbartender.com. And eventually we're going to be putting some merchandise on there. I know, it's kind of crass, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to put some t-shirts. I've been looking into that, trying to figure out how to do fulfillment and sell t-shirts for Keys Bartender on the website and on our Facebook page. So like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I found, interesting, talking about technology, I had 2 Instagram accounts that I didn't know about, meaning I knew I did it when I saw it, but I didn't realize I had set up one and it was active. So I have to figure out how to link them. I wanted to delete one or merge them or something like that. So I was wondering how come there's so many 1,400 followers on Facebook and only 700 on Instagram. It's because it's split between 2, maybe 3 accounts. So it should be around 1,500 on Instagram, which isn't a lot. I realize that now. Or Twitter. Twitter's 1,500. But it's growing, and every year I go, I get another. And I know there's a critical mass. Supposedly say it's just a critical mass. It used to be 100. Now I'm approaching 400 episodes for its year. I know there's podcasts out there to do 1,500 episodes. Hopefully we could do that. I mean, that's as long as I'm living, as long as I find a motivation to do it. And I've always found it motivating, and I appreciate you listening. Once again, share with a friend, and thank you for listening. Take care. Have a great day. Bye.